of tertiary education has at times been seen as a major barrier to accessing higher education qualification. This is particularly the case for many disadvantaged youth. However, since former President Jacob Zuma's announcement to provide free education for the poor, the question I think on everyone's lips as we approach the start of the 2019 academic year, has tertiary education become a little bit more affordable? We've done some digging around. eNCA's Aviwe Mtila went to speak to university executives. He's waiting for us in the newsroom. Aviwe, good afternoon to you. Is there a better sense then of financial stability as we start 2019? Are executives themselves feeling a little more relaxed? What are students telling you?
Well, what we're getting from the university itself, I spoke to Carol Crossley, the Wits University registrar over there. What we're getting is that they're doing their best to facilitate conversations between the universities and NSFAS, the financial aid scheme that will be providing some of the funding for lots of these students. We understand that tomorrow around 700,000 matriculants will be receiving their results, and then thereafter many of them will be trying to register as registrations open across many of the 26 South African universities next week, Monday, on the 7th of January. So funding is going to be a sore issue coming from there. But what we did get at this stage is that the universities, in accordance with the Department of Higher Education, have agreed on a 5.6% university increment. The fees will be going up by 5.6% this year. Of course, you did mention that former President Jacob Zuma did announce free higher education. That was in effect from last year. For many of the first-year students who meet the threshold. I heard from the registrar, the University of Wits registrar today, that many of the second years who meet that threshold will be continuing with that free higher education, and a lot of the first years as well will be enrolled under that.
One of the big problems, of course, that you've already alluded to is NSFAS itself, which we know during 2017 and 2018 has been in a state of disarray.
Of course, that is one of the big problems. We did hear from Minister Naledi Pandor that NSFAS itself has received about 400,000 applications. Of course, not everyone there will receive the funding from that financial aid scheme. The big problem, especially at this time of the year, is the universities receiving funding from NSFAS for the students in time, in time for them to be able to pay fees for the students. So that's what I got from Carol Crossley, is that they're working closely with the financial aid scheme to close that gap and to ensure that the students will get funding in time before the year actually starts.
But in many ways that's not good enough, because students will still have an expectation of payment or assistance with payment. The clock is ticking to the start of the academic year. Many of them still don't know, do they?
Not at all, especially not at this time. Applications for registrations closed around the 30th of September last year. And we heard from Wits that they received around 80,000 applicants wanting to enroll in the first year courses. They only have places for 5,200, so it's a problem as it is. Already we know that tomorrow around 700,000 matriculants will be receiving their results. And of course, the 26 universities and 50 TVT colleges around South Africa don't have enough places to accommodate everyone that will be going through that system. So it's a huge financial burden, not for NSFAS, especially for the poor, and there's also the missing middle, those that are above the 350,000 threshold who can't be put into place for the free education, but then they still can't afford education itself. So it's a huge financial burden at this stage.
And compounding the problem, and this is something that the University of Johannesburg has already mentioned this week, is the perennial issue of walk-ins, which are discouraged. But the reality remains is that people will still arrive, whether it be at the University of Johannesburg or any other institution, expecting to gain access. We can also expect disappointment. Previously, that has also been marred by incidents of violence.
Well, of course, walk-ins are an issue, a thorny issue at this stage. They're an issue that is being tried to phase out at this stage. WITS itself saying that it will not allow walk-ins when it opens the stores on Monday. And UJ, I spoke to them earlier as well, saying the very same thing. So walk-ins are a thorny issue that will not be allowed. But people that haven't applied can actually go to the Department of Higher Education's website where there's a system called the cash system over there where you SMS and they'll be able to tell you which courses are still available at this time if you haven't applied. As I alluded earlier, applications closed around the 30th of September last year already, but walk-ins in most institutions will not be allowed.
All right, Aviwe Mtila, thank you very much indeed.